of gentlemen, one about my age who was with the AEC, Atomic Energy Commission, in Nevada, not Nevada, excuse me, in New Mexico, and another one in California at, now I always slip my name or my mind here. Anyway, he was an older gentleman. They were talking about work, and I was listening and told the older guy that I was in the trench when the bomb didn't go off, asked if he was with the AEC at the time. He said yes, and then I asked him the whys and the wherefores, and he said, first I have to say that the bombs were made, or built, I should say, on a high tower, and on that particular morning when the last scientist came down from wiring the bomb to an electrical charge, he was supposed to take the live wires from the elevator and rewire them into the bomb down below so that when they pull the trigger it'd go off, and the guy forgot to do it, so the bomb didn't go off. So I didn't have anything to worry about, but nobody knew that at the time.
Yeah. Do you remember arriving, and what was it like at all these places?
We arrived in Nevada via helicopters because I was in a helicopter outfit, and at that time they were doing what they called vertical envelopment, which was trying to figure out whether it was going to be viable to lift combat troops into combat with helicopters as opposed to trucks, etc., over land, so that they could get around a lot of rivers, mountains, etc., etc. So that's how we got to and from Nevada. When we went to the USS Boxer from San Diego, we were just transported by bus to Long Beach, where the Boxer was then berthed, and we got on there, but the pilots and crew chiefs flew in with the helicopters because they were going to use the helicopters again in a Wetumpka Bikini to fly, at that point in time, scientists around with respect to the bomb blast and the evaluation, etc., etc.
What was your job or assignment?
That again was clerk typist. I kept track of all of the daily head counts, whatever was needed to be added to a daily, basically diary, or what do I want to say? Basically a diary of what's going on during the particular day. That had to be done every day. Other than that, it was general correspondence of the commander and anybody else that needed something done as far as the military is concerned, and typed up letters, kept track of records, all of the personnel records of the enlisted and also of the officers.
Dang, you did a lot. Did you see combat?
No combat, because the closest thing I came to combat was watching the atomic bombs.
And the fried lizards.
And the fried lizard, or the cooked lizard.
Were there many casualties in your unit?
Because of combat, no, although in boot camp we had one person who had a mental breakdown. He had to see a shrink for a while. We had one guy who didn't qualify on the rifle range when we were doing our weapons training, and he tried to shoot himself, and he was discharged. And a third guy that just couldn't handle the whole thing, and so he wet his bed every night, and they finally let him out too.
Tell me about a couple of your most memorable experiences.
Well, probably already have with respect to the atomic bomb things. Other than that, there was one thing I had left out when we did this the other day, as far as just in writing. When I was in combat training, we were doing grenades, and one of the fellow members of my platoon when you pull the pin on a grenade, there's a handle on it, and you're supposed to hold your thumb over the handle and the grenade in the palm of your hand, pull the pin out so that then you could lift your thumb and the handle would fly off, and then you had just a few seconds, probably about 10-15 seconds, to pitch the grenade, and this guy dropped it. So we all had to hit the deck, and the instructor had to pick it up and get it out of there and pitch it before it blew up on us. The other thing that I always worried about in combat training is we had to crawl under live machine gun fire. They had the machine guns placed on a bar so they couldn't drop too low, and they had barbed wire above us with little trenches with explosives in them, and they told us not to raise our head above the wire or we'd get it shot off. And then they would set the explosives off while we were crawling around, and I was always worried about two things. A short round, which would be the bullet wouldn't go straight, it would drop down because there wasn't enough powder in the shell, and or I was going to run into a damn rattlesnake, which were all over in Camp Petal, and I was going to raise up and get shot. But that didn't happen. So
did it happen to anyone else?
no, not when I was there anyway.
Oh, good. Were you a prisoner of war?
Again, I wasn't in combat.
Um,
And I'll go ahead. Excuse
nope,
me.
you're fine. Okay. Tell me about your experiences in captivity and when free.
Again, no
yeah.
combat, so I didn't have
Okay.
any captivity.
Were you awarded any medals? or
No,
anything
I was in
else?
just shy of 3 years, and I wasn't in combat, so no medals or citations. The only thing I got was the advancement in rank. You had to take a test to pass it in order to get advanced, and I managed to pass on the first time every time I took a test.
Because you're smart.
No,
Yes.
because I studied.
How did you get them? You
Okay,
studied.
yeah, by test. You had to take a test in order to get advanced in rank.
How many or higher ranks may be asked about battle planning? Those who sustained injuries may be asked about the circumstances.
Again, in combat training, yeah, we worked on battle training and how to, each squad was taught how to handle things as far as our squad was concerned and our platoon, and how to watch each other's back, I guess I might say, with respect to making sure somebody didn't get shot or somebody didn't sneak up on us. So that's pretty much the extent of the combat training I remember. But it was pretty intensive, so that if we did get into combat, at least we could hopefully survive.
Yeah, I'm sure that you would have. Did you stay, or how did you stay in touch with your family?
Back then, it was only by snail mail.
Writing those letters?
Those letters we'd write back and forth. When I was in Nevada, I had written, well, my parents had written to me and said that they saw that at least 2 atomic bombs had gone off when we had already seen probably a half a dozen at that time. So, and one time I wasn't writing often enough, and I got a letter from my mother. I opened it up and there was nothing in it but blank paper, a self-addressed stamped envelope. So I decided maybe I ought to write again.
She getting a little antsy. It's funny.
Your grandmother.
I can see it. What was the food like?
After you got used to it, it was pretty good. You got plenty of it because we exercised a lot and we needed it to keep going, but we got decent food for the most part.
Didn't find any.
Sea rations weren't too terribly good. They were left over from World War II and Korea. Basically, that consisted of a can of something, fish, stew, what they called steak, which is basically part of a stew, and everybody got a pack of cigarettes. There was powdered coffee and cocoa and creamer. generally a candy bar in it. So I didn't smoke, so I could generally trade for the better cans of food. That, so I ate fairly well even on C rations.
Okay. Um, did you have plenty of supplies?
And not worrying about combat, we didn't have to worry about supplies. So yeah, we had everything we needed.
Did you feel pressured at all or under any stress?
After getting out of boot camp and combat training, no. Then after that, it was at least in peacetime, it was pretty much a job that was about the size of it. We did have to go back out and requalify on the range once a year as far as rifle training and accuracy was concerned. We had to keep our weight down, and we obviously had to stand in parades and what have you for inspection. But other than that, after boot camp and combat training, it was pretty much what I would call civilian life now.
Yeah. Was there something special you did for good luck?
Nope, didn't have to. I wasn't worried about dying other than under atomic bombs and that incident that I mentioned in the combat training where the machine guns were live fire.
um, how did people entertain themselves?
Again, after we got out of boot camp combat training, it was pretty much civilian life on base. We had an enlisted club where we could go and get some pizza, hamburgers, beer, or Coke, or whatever we wanted after work if we didn't eat or if we wanted something other than going to the chow hall. There was a theater on base. There was exercise places on base, libraries. So it was pretty much again like civilian life after getting out of the training sessions.
So there's probably no entertainers.
No, we didn't see any entertainers while I was on that particular base.
Okay. What did you do when you left?
Well, being young and dumb, for the most part, I came home when I had a leave of a couple of weeks or what have you. So I would basically, I think I got home twice during the 3 years I was there. Although in my younger years I was raised in Pomona. The folks moved to Pomona, California, which wasn't too terribly far from Santa Ana, and we left in 1950 and I was back in 56, so I still had some grade school friends I occasionally visited, and I also had an aunt and uncle that lived in Pomona, and I'd occasionally get to visit with them as well on weekends.
Okay. Do you recall any particular humorous or unusual events?
Not anything, shall I say, different than what I've already gone through.
No, that's fine.
Okay. Hmm?
We're good.
Okay.
What were some of the pranks that you or others would pull?
Weren't too many pranks in boot camp or combat training while we were on the USS Boxer. As I'd mentioned, it was a World War II ship at that time. And the toilets were not individual, and they weren't in stalls per se, but they were just basically troughs with seats on them at intervals, and they would pump seawater in one end and it would flow down and go out the other. And if we had some newspapers and somebody was reading or not paying any attention, we'd sometimes light the newspapers, toss them in, and let it float down under them and singe a little short hairs.
Okay. Do you have any photographs?
No, I don't. I don't remember where they would be if I still have them, other than we had a boot camp annuals, and I've got that around someplace. I'm not sure where it is in a box right now.
Okay. What did you think of your officers or fellow soldiers?
Our officers and the air wing of the Marine Corps, and I think